CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: negotiations are reportedly underway for a possible three-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Our other headlines: delegates from more than 50 countries meet in Paris to discuss getting more aid into Gaza. The Spanish government grants an amnesty to Catalan separatists in return for their coalition backing, but there is widespread public opposition. And a happy ending after all the drama. Hollywood actors celebrate a $1 billion deal with studios that brings their strike to a close. Negotiations are reportedly underway for a possible three-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for the release of some hostages held by Hamas. There are reports that the deal, which would allow more aid and fuel to enter the besieged enclave, is being brokered by Qatar, Egypt and the United States. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly said there will be no ceasefire until all hostages are released. More than 10,500 people have been killed in Gaza since the 7th of October, when Hamas fighters attacked Israel and killed 1,400 people. The United Nations says both sides have committed war crimes.
On the other side of this gate is Gaza, already described as the world's biggest open-air prison before 7 October, under a 56-year occupation and a 16-year blockade by Israel. The atrocities perpetrated by Palestinian armed groups on the 7th of October were heinous. They were war crimes, as is the continued holding of hostages. The collective punishment by Israel of Palestinian civilians is also a war crime, as is unlawful, forcible evacuation of civilians.
Let's talk to our correspondent Noor Harazin in Gaza. Noor, Palestinian officials reporting hospitals being hit in Israeli strikes. What's the situation where you are?
Well, actually, over the past 3-4 days, the Israeli warplanes and Israeli tanks have been targeting hospitals around the Gaza Strip. Of course, the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza.
I'm terribly sorry. We've lost the line to Gaza. We will try and return to that a little later in the programme. In the meantime, we'll carry on with the rest of today's news. And the Israeli army says it's pushing deeper into Gaza City as urban fighting between the IDF and Hamas intensifies. Let's talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Sarah, the IDF reporting battles with Hamas in Gaza. What's the latest you're hearing on the ground operation?
Hi, Jamie. Well, look, the military says it's taken control of a key Hamas stronghold in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. It also says that it's closing in on a Hamas military headquarters, which it alleges is inside Al-Shifa Hospital, the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip. Now, it's also released these pictures of what it says are a drone manufacturing plant next to a residential building near a school. It's taken some journalists inside, embedded these journalists in the Gaza Strip with the IDF for a day, showing them what it alleges are these Hamas facilities. Now, it also says it has killed a senior commander. He is allegedly responsible for this anti-tank missile program. But look, the IDF is saying that this ground operation, which has been ongoing since last Tuesday, has come at a heavy cost, saying that since it all began, 34 soldiers have now been killed. Jamie.
Israel's parliament has amended its counter-terrorism bill. What sort of changes have now been approved?
Well, look, this is a temporary 2-year measure which bans, quote, the systematic and continuous consumption of publications of a terrorist organisation under circumstances that indicate identification with a terrorist organisation. Now, this is specifically referring to both Hamas and also ISIS. Now, anyone found guilty of this offence is facing 1 year jail time. And look, it is being widely slammed right around the country and also internationally, Jamie, with the Association for Civil Rights here in Israel saying that it has no precedence in democratic countries, saying its ambiguity leaves it open to interpretation by law enforcement officers. So, look, I'm sure this is something that we may see raise its head over the next few days, the next few weeks. We've already seen arrests before this was introduced of people who posted things that were pro-Hamas on social media here in Israel. Jamie.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Well, let's take you back now to our correspondent Noor Harazin, who reports now from the centre of Gaza.
The Israeli warplanes continued striking the Gaza Strip, northern Gaza, also here in southern Gaza. Several homes were airstriked, lands, farms. According to the Palestinian medical sources, the death toll here in Gaza in the past 4 weeks, as we are actually entering a second month, is up to more than 10,500. They're also talking about more than 2,500 reports of missing people that are still under the rubble. Also, Abu Ubaidah, who is the spokesperson of the Al-Qassam Brigade, said in a televised statement yesterday's evening that he asked about the Palestinian people to stay steadfast and patient over what is happening. And he also said that 60 of the Israeli captives here in Gaza were killed due to Israeli strikes on the coastal enclave. Regarding the humanitarian situation, we have been saying this over and over again over the past days. Actually, the things are going from bad to worse, even though there is a small amount of aid entering the Gaza Strip. The main reason is that now the Israeli land troops have actually separated northern Gaza from southern Gaza. So we're talking about around 900,000 Palestinians who are still stuck in northern Gaza with no food or water or electricity, and adding the fact that the UN and other organizations and institutions are not operating now in northern Gaza. If we're talking about the people here in southern Gaza, we're talking about more than 1.1 million people that fled their homes, and now they are taking shelter here in southern Gaza. Some are taking shelter in schools, some in hospitals, some actually in streets. And the UN tried to distribute as much as they can on some of the people on the hospital, but again, we have a big number of people that did not receive any humanitarian aid, adding the fact that it is so little to meet the needs of the Palestinian people here in Gaza.
Well, efforts to end the conflict in Gaza will be the focus of an emergency Arab and Islamic summit in Saudi Arabia this weekend. Before those talks, Arab leaders met African delegations to discuss increased economic cooperation. Saudi Arabia's energy minister told them that action to tackle climate change is important, but should not come at the expense of countries which are less empowered. The Israel-Hamas war in Gaza dominated the rather fiery third debate of US Republican presidential candidates. All pledged full support for Israel. Frontrunner Donald Trump again did not take part, with his 5 rivals attempting to cast themselves as his closest challenger for the Republican presidential nomination. The United States has carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria for the second time in 2 weeks. The Pentagon says it targeted a weapons store used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Washington has accused the group of launching dozens of attacks on US troops in Iraq and Syria since October. Spain's ruling socialist looks set for another term in office after securing the unlikely backing of a Catalan separatist party. The deal went through after the government granted an amnesty for politicians over the region's independence declaration in 2017, some of whom remain in exile. Let's talk to our correspondent Ken Brown in Madrid. Well, Ken, this is a bit of a turn-up for the books. Stable government in Spain looks reliant on politicians who want to split from Spain. What does this deal involve exactly?
Yes, Jamie, a bit of irony there, all right. This is the missing piece to the coalition puzzle that Pedro Sanchez needed. The deal itself means an amnesty for Carles Puigdemont, the leader of the Junts Catalan party. He and the other architects of the 2017 independence, the illegal independence referendum, will now be allowed to return to Spain without facing charges of sedition or anything else for that matter. As a result of that, it means that they will support Pedro Sanchez another 4-year mandate. We should see that happen next week, in the middle of the week, Wednesday or Thursday, a vote in Congress right here behind me. It's been over 3 months since the general elections on the 23rd of July, inconclusive general elections. Now, of course, as a result of this deal, it means that we've seen a lot of anger, a lot of fury on the right side of Spain's deep political divide. We've seen words used like humiliation. They're calling Sanchez a traitor. They're saying he sold his soul and Spain along with it. One conservative politician today said that this was at the beginning of a dictatorship. Sanchez says that he has the support. 80% of people in Catalonia support this deal, and really it's a big victory for Sanchez when you look at it, proving his political survival instincts once more. So likely that we will have a government here in Spain, a socialist-led government with Pedro Sanchez as Prime Minister for another 4 years, confirmed next Wednesday or Thursday, Jamie.
Ken, thanks for that. Our correspondent Ken Brown in Madrid. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the cost of putting a roof over your head, why so many are priced out of the UK's property market.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos and unicorn companies. Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
This week on Razor, the worms that can degrade plastic, and how a clever algorithm and robotic arm are transforming how much can be recycled.
The amount of plastic that's being produced goes up every year, the cost of plastic goes up every year, and that's really building this marketplace where you need high quality automation to be able to deal with the load.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Negotiations are reportedly underway for a possible 3-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Our other headlines: delegates from more than 50 countries meet in Paris to discuss getting more aid into Gaza. And the Spanish government grants an amnesty to Catalan separatists in return for their coalition backing, but there is widespread public opposition. Now, it's a happy ending. The standoff between actors and Hollywood studios appears to be over following a $1 billion pay deal. The strike, which has lasted nearly 4 months, brought the US movie industry to a standstill as actors argued for higher pay in the TV streaming era and protection against the use of artificial intelligence. This 3-year contract includes higher minimum salaries and a new bonus funded by streaming services.
It's been a long process, but I feel really excited that we have reached this point, that today, after 118 days on strike, we finally have an agreement. It's an agreement that our members can be proud of. I'm certainly very proud of it. And that's what we always said we would do. We said we would only accept a fair, equitable, and respectful deal. And that's precisely what this deal is.
Rising inflation and interest rates have forced many first-time buyers in the UK to postpone buying a home. It's also helped to push the cost of renting to an all-time high and created a shortage of available properties. Our correspondent Michael Voss explains.
The private rental market in Britain is in disarray. Too many people are looking for too few properties, while the cost of renting has reached record highs. Finding somewhere affordable was a real challenge for this medical student who ended up skipping classes to attend viewings.
I had to look every day at nearly 100 properties each day on multiple sites. I had to have my own personal agent at different estate agents so that I could get them before they were uploaded onto the site. I also went to at least 2 viewings a day, 7 days a week.
It's a classic student flat. She studies on the landing and shares a bathroom and kitchen with 3 others.
So this is my bedroom and this is where my boyfriend's currently working. We're both students and we moved in together because it's the only place where we could afford the rent.
Each student is paying $1,000 a month and they had to put 6 months' rent down in advance.
It was really a soul-destroying experience, really. It took forever, and we were often outbid or our offers were declined many times. So.
There's long been a housing shortage in Britain for both renters and home buyers. For years, successive governments have failed to meet new housing targets, and the imbalance between supply and demand has grown significantly. According to the property website Rightmove, demand for rental properties is up 41% compared to 2019. While the number of rental properties on the market has fallen by 35%. In 2019, there were an average of 8 people inquiring after each new rental property. Today, that's jumped to 25, up from 20 just 3 months ago.
There is an acute housing shortage, so all housing is unaffordable, and because of the constraints on borrowing, people are moving into rental. So young people can only afford to rent, if they can afford to do that.
The cost of renting has been going steadily up, reaching new record highs every quarter since 2019. In London, the average rent is now almost $40,000 a year.
Inflation and the cost of mortgages has shot up this year, so many landlords are passing this on in higher rents, while others are selling up and getting out of the business altogether.
The consequences are for renters that they can't find anywhere to rent. So you've got more homelessness, you've got more people sleeping on sofas, and rents, the places they can get, are smaller and smaller or shared.
According to the latest government figures, the number of homeless people housed in temporary accommodation is now at an all-time high. It may have been a challenge for these students, but at least they managed to find somewhere to live. Michael Voss, CGTN, London.
Pakistan has issued what it called a final warning to undocumented migrants from Afghanistan who are ordered to leave the country by the end of October. It says 200,000 Afghans have left voluntarily since then, a claim rejected by Kabul, which has called the expulsions humiliating. However, there are reports many Afghans going into hiding to avoid deportation. Myanmar's president is warning the country is at risk of breaking apart after rebel fighters in Shan State seized control of most of the border towns and crossings into China. In recent weeks, several ethnic armed groups have joined forces to overrun dozens of military posts and take control of trade routes. It's seen as the biggest threat to the military-installed government since it came to power in 2021. Unseasonably cold weather and blizzards in northeast China has disrupted public transport and electricity supplies. Highways, offices and schools have been closed with flights cancelled as several cities have told residents to stay indoors. Snow continues to fall in some areas. Global auction houses have been bringing expensive pieces of art to China as they seek to attract more international buyers. And at this year's CIIE, there's plenty for art lovers. Our correspondent Chen Tong reports.
This is a painting by French artist Claude Monet, a piece drawn in 1893. The precious piece was brought by auction house Sotheby's to the China International Import Expo. It's the third year the global auction house has brought valuable art pieces to the expo.
This year we brought in total 15 artworks, so including various types like sculpture, like old master and contemporary. So you will see around, you will actually see those very well-known artists around the world, in both China and global.
But how have these precious pieces been shipped to the expo?
This is a bonded warehouse for art pieces in Shanghai's free trade zone. In the past, art pieces wanting to come to the China market need to go through a very complicated process. But now, because of the free trade zone, it has become much easier and straightforward.
Prior to the establishment of the Shanghai Free Trade Zone in 2013, art and other cultural objects being brought to China had to be declared for clearance before they could be shipped, a process that could sometimes take months or years to complete. Now, that work is done in Shanghai.
The Shanghai Customs Bureau allows art pieces to come first and then be declared for clearance. And the local officials also help to shorten the examination period. All these have helped art pieces to come via the Shanghai Free Trade Zone for display and sale in China.
The easy mechanism helps to expand our market in China, and you can tell from the expo. The total area of the section for art pieces at this year's expo reached over 3,000 square meters, with more than 130 art pieces being shown to Chinese consumers. Chen Tong, CGTN, Shanghai.
And a 1932 artwork by the Spanish painter Pablo Picasso has sold for almost $140 million at a New York auction. The painting, called Femme à la Montre, or Woman with a Watch, is a portrait of the artist's lover and muse, Marie-Thérèse Walker. The sale marks the second highest price ever achieved for a Picasso and makes it the most valuable art piece sold at auction this year. Now, half a century since their first appearance in Beijing, the Philadelphia Orchestra is back in the Chinese capital. The US musicians say they hope to strike a chord with the people of both countries. Our correspondent Sun Tian Yuan reports.
In a world where differences persist across many issues, there's long been common ground between China and the US for pandas, ping pong, and the Philadelphia Orchestra. On Thursday, visiting musicians from the orchestra performed at the Peking Union Medical College Hospital. The orchestra's first visit to Beijing in 1973 followed Richard Nixon's historic trip that helped with the thaw in relations between the two nations. 73-year-old David Booth, a violinist who was part on the first ever tour, returns 50 years later. The changes in China since then have been enormous, but one thing he says has remained the same is the passion among Chinese people for music.
Music, I think, is a great communicating force, and everybody reacts to it positively. It touches everybody's hearts. Everybody's hearts are the same, and it's one of the most important things, I think, in diplomacy and the love between the two nations.
His peer, Philip Cates, has also performed for a very special audience. Here at the pediatric ward, his little fans call him Uncle Beard.
It is a very powerful way, I think, and to show that you care about other people, just to to share something you can do. Music is not going to solve everything, but it makes some people smile.
The performance offers a moment of comfort for the young patients and their families.
The songs were beautiful. We appreciate him for traveling all the way to China to perform and make the kids feel better. This was a great memory for the little ones in the hospital.
Since 1973, the orchestra has toured China 12 times. Their last visit was in 2019, prior to the pandemic.
Over the past 5 decades, the orchestra has served as a bridge connecting China and the U.S. through cultural exchange. And in years to come, it's hoped it will continue to bring people on both sides closer together. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN, Beijing.
Now, it might be November, but Christmas seems to come earlier every year. Festive goods are already on the shelves in what's known as Christmas creep. It's a marketing ploy to get us to spend more and earlier. But is it really what we want? Our correspondent Isabella Diaz reports.
Thanksgiving may be just weeks away, but you'd never know it stopping by your local supermarket or grocery store. Whether it's Mariah Carey taking to social media to belt out her Christmas classic, or the plastic Santas being set up and displayed before the pumpkins are off the front porch. The holiday season is here, whether you like it or not.
Deals.
Walmart's so-called Black Friday sale started closer to the Day of the Dead than the actual day of deals. This year, the retail giant is having not one, but 2 Black Friday sales. All deals begin online and continue in stores, the first starting November 8th, the second on November 22nd. Neither day, by the way, being a Friday.
Black Friday deals start next Wednesday? Oh my God, that's in like 1 week.
Starbucks released their holiday drink menu and signature red cups on November 2nd, just 2 days after Halloween and nearly 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. And for all the shoppers who say they're against the early holiday cheer, profits say otherwise. The National Retail Federation expects American consumers to spend an average of nearly $900 on holiday gifts this year. And nearly 40% of those surveyed said they usually get started on their holiday shopping even before November 1st. Reasons include wanting to avoid last-minute shopping stress and crowds, as well as wanting to spread out their budgets. According to a new Gallup poll, 1 in 4 holiday shoppers would even start spending as early as September. And online brick-and-mortar stores aren't hesitant to have winter holiday sales, even in the summer months. Still not on board? Then you may have younger shoppers to blame. Nearly 50% of young adults Gallup surveyed said they'd start their holiday shopping ahead of time for those early sales. So while corporate dollar signs may be partly to blame for the Christmas creep, it's become the holiday beasts most shoppers seem only too happy to keep feeding. Isabella Diaz, CGTN.
The headlines again. Negotiations are reportedly underway for a possible 3-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for the release of hostages held by Hamas. Our other headlines: the Spanish government grants an amnesty to Catalan separatists in return for their coalition backing, but there is widespread public opposition. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel, on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.